Hello, and welcome to the Conga Bonga tutorial series. In this episode, I'll show you the basics of getting your samples from out of your DAW and into Conga Bonga. And though there are numerous ways of going about doing this, we're going to take the slow and simple approach in order to get an initial grasp on fundamental concepts. Later on in this series, I'll show you dramatically faster and more advanced ways for batch exporting entire libraries in record time. But for now, we're going to keep things very simple and beginner friendly. Let's jump in. Before we can start using Conga Bonga, we first need to get ourselves a few samples to work with. In this example, I'll be using Fender Studio, but you can follow along in any DAW that you like. Logic Pro, Cubase, Ableton, FL Studio. The process is very similar. To get us going, we only want a small set of clean, basic percussion samples. In my case, I'm using the Cuba library by Native Instruments. But you can use anything that you like. Sound Iron Apocalypse, East-West Storm Drum, Damaged by Heaviosity. Whatever you've got is totally fine. Start by picking one percussion library that you already have. Then, choose 3 instruments from that library. For this example, I'm choosing a bongo, a conga, and a Cajun. Create one track for each instrument. Then, for each instrument, play a single note repeatedly to get an idea of how many variations it has. These are called round robins, which are essentially different versions of the same hit. For the purpose of learning, I'm going to capture 4 samples, even though this bongo has more. Now, we're going to create a handful of MIDI notes to capture our samples. Start with one note that's long enough to fully capture the sound. Then, set the velocity to maximum, so we're getting the strongest hit. Duplicate that note multiple times and adequately space them all out like this, so as to be sure and confident that the audio of each individual note does not overlap. Repeat the process for the other 2 instruments like so, by taking that same MIDI block and copying it across to your other instrument tracks. Then, check to ensure that each instrument has the MIDI notes aligned with a keyboard note that triggers sample playback. Simply select all notes and transpose up or down if needed. Now, set your timeline export range from the very start to slightly after the final note ends. Before exporting, quickly check your levels. Make sure nothing is clipping, but also make sure nothing is overly quiet either. Now, let's organize everything. Create a folder, ideally in your music folder, called Conga Bonga Samples. Inside that, create another folder called Conga Bonga Learning. Then, inside that folder, create one folder per instrument. For me, that's bongo, conga, and Cajun. Export each track as a stem. Use WAV format, 24 or 32 bitrate, and 48 kHz sample rate. Export them into your Conga Bonga Learning folder. Finally, place each exported file into its matching folder. The bongo file goes into the bongo folder, the conga file goes into the conga folder, and the Cajun file goes into the Cajun folder. Now that we have a few starter samples to work with, in the next episode, I'll show you how to slice and organize them inside Conga Bonga using a feature called the banana splitter. I'll see you there.